me now is Gary Billingsley of Aurex Energy. Welcome. Before we get started, what's your symbol? What exchange are you on?
The symbol is AURX, and we're on the TSX Venture Exchange.
You're an interesting exploration company in the sense that you're in the process right now of acquiring and operating an asset in LNG in Texas, of all places. Tell us why, first of all, what that project is and why that's your strategy.
Well, first of all, just to point out, we are mining guys. And,
yeah.
Even though we do have some oil and gas experience, in our backgrounds, the opportunity came up, and as you know, the equity markets have been pretty tough over the last bunch of years for junior miners.
Right.
And we were in the process of raising money actually last summer, oddly enough here in Toronto, when somebody approached us and said, would you guys like to acquire some near-term cash flow? And the ears perked up, and we said, sure, tell us more about it. And it turned out that it was a private natural gas company in Texas that had acquired a number of shut-in gas wells from the downturn in Texas in around 2008 when the prices fell and the bigger guys sort of left the state. And the opportunity was there to basically turn these wells back on, rework them, and generate cash flow that we could then use to help support our mineral exploration side. So we like the idea. In my background, I've done it before, and it worked well, so we went ahead to do it, and we just completed the acquisition.
You just completed that deal. Well, congratulations on that. So what does it mean in the near future for you is in your ability now to then start to be able to seek out some of those other opportunities that you're hoping to identify and then develop?
Yeah, we still have to raise cash, and that's we should be concluding that fairly shortly here to kickstart the reworking program down in Texas. And the idea there is these wells are all tied into pipelines. The pipeline,
so already connected.
They're already connected, and the owner of the pipeline is anxious to get gas. And a lot of that has to do with new LNG plants they're building in Houston. The Mexicans apparently are buying a lot more gas than they used to too. So there's a good market for it. So they're anxious for us to get these wells going. And when they were shut in, several of them that still have gauges that we can read on the wellbore, they've pressured up, and they can be run conventionally for a while when we turn them back on.
So that's a way of saying there's very little remedial work that you have to do to
Yep, and in terms of the way we look at it as mining guys is the capital required to turn these wells back on is probably less than the cost of a good drill hole, and so when you look at it that way, no exploration risk. There is mechanical risk involved in some of this. To turn them on conventionally, probably refurbish what's on surface there around $200,000. To refracture some of the wells, which is really what we're looking to do. When they were originally drilled, these wells, and they're horizontal wells. 8 of them are horizontal wells.
Right.
And you've
into
got
that shale.
the Barnett Shale.
Right.
It's one of the most prolific sort of units in the United States, producing over about 3 billion cubic feet of natural gas a day. And there's been 20 to 30,000 wells drilled in it over the years. Most of that when gas was around $8 US an MCF down there.
Yep.
And because of the sort of the pace of that activity, not all the wells were drilled necessarily properly or completed properly or refractured properly. And when you're thinking about a 3,000 to 5,000 foot horizontal length that's all in pay, and you can see they've only fractured a small part of that, there's opportunity there to go back in and refracture and increase production over the original production, and certainly more than double the reserves that are there. So all of that can be done probably in the $600,000 to $700,000 range to recomplete each one of these things.
That's it?
That's it, with between a 1 and a 1.5 year payback. So, like I say, with no exploration risk, mechanical risk, that there could be things like water in there that you might have to deal with.
Yes.
But the risk reward to us is well worth it. And we recently had our engineering report completed that shows when all 10 wells are on stream, we could be generating US about $10 million in operating cash flow a year. So that's after all operating expenses, and taxes and everything. So, but the real blue sky on that is that there are probably over 3,000 of these shut-in wells where the bigger players have left, and these wells are sitting there. The pipeline owner has about 30 that they want us to look at. So we could go from 10, 30, and maybe up to 100. So when you start multiplying those numbers, you know, if the original 10 can do 10 million a year and you multiply it out, there's a lot of blue sky there. And so eventually we can see, even though we're looking at using some of that cash flow to develop our resources on the mining side, and those are mostly in Nevada right now, I think down the road, that gas entity could actually turn into a fairly major entity.
Right, and as you say, there are new LNG facilities that are under construction right now in Texas. They need to satisfy that market, which goes beyond North America. As they start to firm up their contracts, of course, they're going to need supply.
That's right, and the other part of it is that the gas prices down in Texas right now, the Henry Hub price, which is sitting at around $3 US. We get a premium to the Henry Hub because it's sweet gas. So we're probably looking at more than $4 Canadian an MCF compared to like 2 or less in Alberta. So there's quite a difference in developing natural gas down there.
So you've just completed this acquisition. We're not at that point where you're operational right now. What's the timeline between now and when you'll start to be operational, and then you can start to see that cash flow?
We're targeting less than 2 months before we start probably turning on some of the first wells just on a conventional basis to generate cash flow. And even when we're into the rework stage, that probably takes less than 2 months to bring those things on stream. So it's very quick.
So next 4 to 6 months, you should be experiencing some positive cash flow there. So, and then of course that takes us back to the fact that you are an exploration company in energy-related metals, copper, zinc, and so on. What do you have under wraps or on the way right at the moment that you're looking into? Yeah,
and that's kind of, I didn't mention that at the start, but sort of the overlying theme in all of this is that we are looking at energy-related resources, basically. So it was no stretch for us to look at natural gas, which, when you're looking at sort of the trend away from fossil fuels, if you like, natural gas is a transition in that whole process to go to LNG, a lot less carbon emission and all of that as you're moving forward to electrification, because electrification isn't going to happen like overnight.
Well, and LNG, of course, is used in power generation, cogen power generation, gas and steam, and there's a tremendous demand for that, particularly in China.
Yep. European markets, Chinese markets, and that's definitely the target that we're looking at. I mean, my background for probably the last 15 years or more, it has been strategic metals, and a lot of those were battery sort of related metals. My view is that the number one electric metal is copper. And so
you can't do anything without copper.
So I mean, in our project portfolio, we have most of our projects actually have copper associated with them, as well as zinc. There is cobalt there, which hot battery metal
Well, yeah, vital in the green technology space around lithium batteries. You can't do it without cobalt if you want to have a stable battery.
And as sort of a side, if you want to call it a byproduct, gold is with most of these things as well. So we think that it's a good time actually to start developing some gold projects, because we're pretty bullish on the future of gold here. So the overlying theme with these sort of energy-related metals, we're looking at basically base metal products. Some of them have cobalt as a byproduct, also silver.
Yes.
So that's where we're headed.
Do you have any projects currently underway in those energy-related metals?
Yep. The sort of the history of AURX is originally it was a company called Canadian Platinum Corp that was headquartered out of Calgary, and the group that was running it, and they did a lot of the original work privately. Asked me to take it over, and one of the legacy projects they had been working on is in Saskatchewan, and it's the second largest ultramafic actually in North America with platinum group elements, and they were focused on platinum. And in fact, what the deposit is, and there's a resource on it, it's a nickel copper project, really, that has platinum group elements with it.
Yeah.
So that project is at the stage where it will require a significant amount of drilling, I think, to get the resource up to where it needs to be economic. But it's in good standing until 2036, something like that. So we're looking for a partner for that one. So that's I call that our legacy project. We've got another project we call Craig Lake that's situated on the Flin Flon Manitoba border, or Manitoba Saskatchewan border.
Which is an area you know well.
I know well. I've been born in Flin Flon, and actually worked with Hudson Bay back in the day as an underground mine geologist.
Wow.
The project has got deep EM targets, and it's within a stone's throw of the old West Arm mine that Hud Bay produced back in the 1980s. And so those targets, have a pretty reasonable shot at copper zinc. But when we took over the company, moved it from Calgary to Saskatoon, and as I mentioned, equity was hard to come by. We went looking for projects that we could get a bigger bang for our bucks. We went looking for more grassroots projects.
Yes.
And came across a couple in Nevada that really attracted our attention. One we call Cook. It's in Humboldt County in northern Nevada, likely an extension of the Battle Mountain trend, which had high-grade gold assays, high-grade copper assays on it. So we completed our initial program on that last summer with fairly spectacular results that verified some of the historic work that had been done on the property.
Yes.
The other one we picked up.
So, well, before you go on to the other one, where are you at on that project then?
We are heading for the next stage. So once we get the natural gas thing sort of kicked off, we actually have drill targets now on that Cook project. So it's ready for drilling.
And do you have a timeline on that?
Yeah, this year. We want to start that likely this summer. Unfortunately, it snows there.
Yes, so you got to get in there before the weather does.
Well, and or wait till I think May, June probably, and we'll
for
send
spring
the crews
breakup.
back in.
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay.
So that's where that one is, and the crew that was on there. There's 4 major structures on that project, but and something like 32 old workings that they found and mapped on there, and the historic surface sampling there had produced some pretty high-grade results. We duplicated that.
Yeah.
Almost 20% of our assays were over an ounce per ton when they sampled on surface.
Right.
And up to 15% copper, especially in one structure. The hyperspectral that we did over the property looking for alteration that was consistent with epithermal deposits was there. Showed that there is a system mineralizing epithermal type deposit, but also there's a porphyry signature there too. And and certainly to the north of us, there are guys working on porphyry copper. So that one is we think is going to be pretty good moving forward.
Yeah. And then you have another one in Nevada as well.
We have another one in Mineral County,
yeah,
just south of Hawthorne. It's about 2.5 hour drive south of Reno.
Yeah.
It actually is a former producer back in the early 70s, so there's underground workings on it. It's a skarn type deposit, so there's actually multiple types of mineralization on it. So there's an intrusion into carbonate, so there's actually iron-rich mineralization there that has a lot of silver in it, but there's also replacement type deposits sitting in the limestone where the grades are near massive sulfide over about 12 meters that they cross-cut underground. So we just recently, and we haven't announced this yet, but we will in the next couple of weeks, we've got the assays back from underground sampling we did there to confirm that historical sort of underground work that they did, and we'll be announcing that shortly. And so that project also, part of the option agreement, we're earning into that one. There's a mill about 50 kilometers away that could be useful down the road.
So would you say your expertise is being able to identify opportunities or see potential that others may have overlooked?
Well,
because I know you're in mining and exploration, but it's that ability to identify something that maybe somebody else didn't quite pick up on. And is that really, the core of what the brains trust at AURX is all about?
We seem to be good at it, and I always tell people I don't know how much of it is being smart, or how much of it is being lucky and in the right place at the right time. But being able to identify things like that, I think that we have a knack for it. And certainly in the history of not just me, but the people that I work with, they've been pretty good at picking out deposits that can go all the way.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit about your team. Of course, there's you. It's clear to anybody who's watching that you've got a tremendous depth of experience and knowledge around each one of these projects, and you've done this kind of work before, taking this strategy forward. Who else is on your team?
We're keeping it lean right now.
Good idea.
In the past when we've done some of these companies and we've staffed up and stuff, it's there's a lot of pressure on when you've got. As soon as you mention the word human resources, that's probably a hint that maybe you've gotten too big. Anyway,
well, it means that you're spending money on staff sitting in an office rather than on the project itself.
The advisors that we have are geologists my age that I've worked with for over 30 years, so they're kind of oversee what we're doing. But there's a local consulting group in Saskatoon called Axiom that have a number of very smart, I call them young kids. They're probably between 35 and 40 now, but
very young. Yes,
they're youngsters.
Yeah,
and they're the ones that are doing all of our exploration work on the ground.
Yeah,
and they've got all the technology down, using drones, and they're a one-stop shop. They've got geophysicists, they've got geologists, they've got connections to metallurgists. So that's really what our team consists of. We've got sort of the advisors, the grayer hair guys, and then some very smart consulting geologists working for us.
Well, you look like you're in a unique and interesting position right now, especially with the acquisition of the wells down in Texas with natural gas, giving you that cash flow to move forward.
Well, and that's the other part of it, is that the subsidiary company is still intact in Dallas, and the fellas, there's two guys down there that are seasoned oil and gas explorers. They're hands-on guys.
Yeah.
And they're still operating wells and for other as consultants for other groups down there. So that'll be a big part of the team going forward, is that expertise.
Well, you're at a really interesting point, and I hope you'll come back and give us an update next year, because it sounds like you've got a lot on the go, and it'll be quite interesting to hear how you've moved each of these projects along. And I'm sure there might be other ones on the horizon at that point too.
There's lots that we're thinking about, and I'd love to come back and It always goes slower than you think it should. But
Of course, yeah.
one step at a time, and we'll get there.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, great talking to you. Yes.